Screen is visible for everyone.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So today we are going to start a session that is a Hibernate session. So what is a Hibernate? Why we need a Hibernate? What exactly Hibernate does? Before going to all these things, we need to revise all the things that we know till this time, right? So those who join today and those was working with the Java, advanced Java course content, for them, just a small revision. What we did, we tried to save our data. So we save our data into file, but we know the limitations for storing the data into the file, right? Then we shift to the database for storing the large amount of data where we can relate the data, we can retrieve the data very easily. So in a relational format, relational database, we store the data. But to store the data with the database, we use a JDBC concept. And in a JDBC concept, what we use a statement to execute a query. We use a prepared statement. I hope everyone remember. For executing dynamic query, parameterized query, we use a callable statement, right? Callable statement for stored procedure. Then we use a result set to retrieve the data and to process the data, right? So we use a statement, prepared statement, callable statement for executing the queries, update statement like insert, update, delete. And we return an update count that indicates how many rows were affected in a database. Also, we executed query statement which returns row result set. So select star from. And row result set is used to iterate through the collection, whichever we are getting from the database side, and that we try to display. So that we done with the help of console application, as well as we done it with the help of web application, with the help of servlet and with the help of JSP. Okay. So only the client get change. Whatever the data access logic we created, I hope everyone remember that we started with Pojo class. Then we created a reusable connection with the help of dbutil, a class which is just responsible for making the connection. And then we created a data access layer. And what we have inside the data access layer, we just have a insert, update, delete, and select, or select with the condition with the constraint. So basically all CRUD operation for a particular table we created with the help of JDBC. Yes, everyone able to recall all these things, what we did in a JDBC. Okay, because these things will require for today's session. So can I say that with the help of this, we are able to persist. We are able to persist means what? To store the data permanently. We are able to persist the data. Have it persisted data? You can reply me in a chat box. What data you persisted? I accepted a string data, for example, employee specific data, and with the help of JDBC, object information, data from the application, we persisted into the database permanently with the help of JDBC. Agree? Right? But there we use some statement, prepared statement and all for persisting it. Means the object directly we haven't persisted. We extracted the data from the object and we persisted. Then second thing is we in a file application, for persisting the data in a file application, we go with the serialization concept. So what is the serialization concept? Which is used for persisting the object into the file. That was the serialization. Persisting the data into the database with the help of JDBC. So our business logic gets changed as the source, as the destination where we are going to persist the data gets changed. Okay. Now here, if you go with the Hibernate, what basically we are going to do? This Hibernate is going to provide you the framework which is going to interact with the database, right? So Hibernate is a Java framework that simplifies the development of Java application to interact with the database. But already we done an interaction with the database. Already we created a DAL layer. Already we access the data from the database. Already we uh, insert, update, delete, select, all the things we did with the help of database and Java application. Then why these things we needed? Why Hibernate? Are you clear with the need, everyone? Because already we done that, accessing the data from the database, showing the data in a console application, in a web application, but still why we are using Hibernate? Okay, so this is the why concern that first we'll discuss, and then we'll go with the actual Hibernate uh, content. We'll see the components, architecture, execution. Okay. Hibernate is nothing but a framework which is ORM tool, Object Relational Mapping Tool, right? Now we are aware with the term object, and also we are aware with the Relational Database Management System, RDBMS. So what that ORM is going to do? So before starting this ORM and all, in a chat box, let me know how many of you are not aware with JDBC. How many of you are not aware with JDBC? Just tell me, not aware. Okay, okay. Those who are not aware with the JDBC, also tell that whether you are aware or not aware with SQL, database specific queries, insert, update, delete. Okay, fine. So, yeah. So what is JDBC? In short, I will tell so that understanding Hibernate becomes easy. So see, those who are not aware, what is, you know, Java, right? Have you created a Java application? So we'll consider, yes, you created a Java application. Okay. In a Java application, everything is in the form of object because we are working with the classes and everything. And database is not created by Java. It's a separate technology that is used to store the data, to persist the data, to store the data in the tabular format in the form of rows and columns. So let's suppose this is a database which we are going to use for storing the data related to the application. Fine. So now to the database side, as you are aware with the database and SQL, to the database side, we have a type of instructions called as a SQL, structured query language, which is understood by the database only. Agree? So database understand only the form of insert, update, delete, and select. Right? These understand by the database only, different types of database. But whenever I have a data, let's suppose I have a table on the database side and that table contain ID, name and city. So for example, ID 101, name ABC and city Pune. Here I have the data in the form of integer. ID is equal to 102. Then string value. NM is equal to some string value I want to store over there, right? And some string data type, string value, city is equal to Pune something is the record. So when I want to send this information, this will be in the form of variable, in the form of object. So how I can write, how I can send the data? Compulsory, I have to use insert query or update query or delete query depending on the requirement. So my SQL will be in the form of string. Okay. So insert into table and values I'm going to provide. That is my roll number 102, name of the student like XYZ, and the city, that is Pune. So that is total in the form of object. So how this string will get converted into the SQL, the format that a database understand. So we need a translator or the intermediate or the mediator, which know both the framework, both the technology, who know string format given by Java and who know how to convert that string accepted from the Java application, how to convert into the SQL. Are you clear? So this conversion, this translation, this in between Java and database, who is going to do the who is going to play the role of translator? That is the data access technology, and that data access technology we use as JDBC. As per the different type of framework, different type of application, different data access technologies are there. But as we are having our application created with the help of Java, database could be anything. Java database connectivity. This is going to give you the API, application programming interface. And what that APIs are going to do, they are going to perform the operations on the database side. So we use a statement, we use a result set. These are the classes ready-made interface given by the API. So JDBC in short going to do this. So these values will get stored over here with the help of JDBC. So this is all the in short introduction to the JDBC. Clear? So that was the thing that we learn in a Java, in a web application using Java, ki how you can store your data into the database. But that time, this is not an object, whole object we are passing as it is. Okay. I will show you our previously created content over here. So you will get the idea ki what is that query, how the query is getting sent from application to the database side. So how we created JDBC application. So you can see here, this is a JDBC application, select start from customer, where username and passwords are getting changed. Checked prepared statement is used for executing dynamic query. And whatever the data we retrieve in the form of result set, that we try to store over here. So this is how JDBC program written. So as a JDBC is there, then still why we need Hibernate? Why we need a ORM? So that is the need first we are going to discuss. I hope you clear those who are not aware with the JDBC. This is in short because JDBC is already a very big concept we seen. So JDBC acting as a data access technology, there we use a DAL layer, data access layer, a cleaner separation. So first discuss what is ORM. ORM stands for Object Relational Mapping. That is ORM. So why we need a ORM? So what is the need of ORM? Object Relational Mapping. Whenever we are working with the programming language like Java, like a .NET, we always work with the classes, right? We always work with the object. So to the application side, to the Java side, application side, we work with the class, right? What are the class? Class contains data members. So we in short call them as a field. And every class object will have the information about that class and the fields. So this is the object. Okay. But if you go to the database side, we do not have any class concept. We do not have any field concept. We have a very simple concept called as a table. And what is a table? Table is nothing but the collection of rows where each and every row will get described by the columns. Okay. So that is the structure of any table. Every table will have the description. Attributes description is given in the form of column. What type of data? Description about that data given by the columns. So that is basically tabular format. Okay. And again, if you see here, these are two different technology. One is working with the only class and object, and second is they're working with the tables only, rows and columns. So there is a gap between these two, between object-oriented languages and database. So that is called as a mismatch. And due to this difference, due to this mismatch between the two different models, getting the data and associating object into the relational database structure and vice versa, which requires the lots of programming, tedious programming. So what are these problem mismatches? There are basically, this will help you for interview, YORN. Okay. So side by side you note down, I'm mentioning that all mismatches over here. Very first mismatch is granularity. What it means, first of all. Are you aware with the has a relationship that we created with Java, with object-oriented programming? What is the need of this? See, if I'm working with the person class, every person class will have the address. So what we created into the application side, we created a person class and we created a address class separately. Address contains city, state, pin code and rest of the thing. And every person contains what? Name of the person, right? Every person will contain address. So can we say that person has an address? Person contains address. So that is a containment we did. And here we did the granularity. So what is the granularity? It is the extent to which a system could be broken down into small pieces, small parts. So these small parts called as a converting this into the small parts is called as a granularity, right? So if you have the person class and person class object if you created, so what that person class object contain? Every person will have the ID. Every person will have the name. I'm talking about the object. Every person will have address. And what address is going to have? City, state, pin code, and country. Are you clear? Plus person information, name of the person, age of the person, qualification of the person. All these details will be there. So when you are storing it into the database, sometimes you will have an object model which has more than one classes than the number of corresponding table. You have only one table into the database. Okay. So like your database contains only one table and you have two classes over there. So this is the granularity mismatch between object model and relational model. Because when you want to store this person specific details must get stored into the person and address specific details must get stored into the address. Or in a one table, both classes details must get stored. So that is going to be a hectic for developer. Again, another mismatch here is inheritance. We have object-oriented programming major pillar called as the inheritance, where we can do the reusability and extensibility. But RDBMS do not define anything similar or on the whole, that is inheritance. Okay, so this is the mismatch. Inheritance. we have in a object, but we do not have in a relational database. Then third mismatch is identity. How two objects are same or not get identified by the Java application. So we know that we use equal method for checking equality based on the data member, or you can use double equal to, that is the assignment operator, right? Which is going to check with the memory location if their hash code is same, right? But how the identity is getting checked with the database? In a database, the identity is getting checked based on the primary key only. So this is again a mismatch, right? And another mismatch is association. That is how one class associated with the other classes. In a object-oriented programming, we are using association using object references. One object reference we are giving to the another object. But in a relational database management system, association is represented with the help of foreign key and primary key. And we have the constraint to guarantee the integrity. Okay. So these are some differences. Also data navigation is there, how we can navigate the data from one to another. So to reduce all these mismatches, which one granularity, where you can make the parts of a very big application into the classes, inheritance, identity, association, and data navigation. So solution for all these mismatches is given by ORM. So object relational mapping. So what ORM is going to do? ORM is going to map object to the relational database. This ORM provides a simple API for storing and retrieving Java object directly. In JDBC, we store object but not directly. We use some technique and indirectly we store it. But ORM will store the data directly to the database. So how ORM works? To the application side and to the database side. Application side, we have a class, and every class object we use to store the data. So this class is getting mapped. I say map. With the help of ORM tool, this data will get mapped, class will get mapped into the table. What it means, if I'm working with the class to the application side, I am working with the table to the database side. Is that okay? So class will get mapped to the table. Then in the class, I have a field. That means data members. I have field inside the class. But data members fields are used for the description. Okay. How table is getting described? How table is getting described? Table is getting described with the help of columns, right? So field will get mapped to the columns. So who is going to do this mapping? This is given by the ORM API. And class objects we have, which contains all the fields description information. So that object will get converted, will get mapped to the row. So this mapping is done with the help of ORM, right? So you can directly save, for example, if I have a save method, any class object directly I can give to the database for saving. That is the main intention behind this. So you don't have to extract the data like get integer, get string or like that with the help of getters that we did in our DAL layer. You can directly data send data to the database and directly fetch the data from the database. So what is the ORM? It is a technique that allow an application written in object-oriented language to deal with the information as object rather than using database specific concept like row, columns, and tables, which is facilitated by the object or relational mapper. So what is the benefit of this? Of course, it is going to give you the better system architecture, reducing the coding time, caching and transaction, these things are given. So that is the ORM. I hope you got the idea what is the ORM. Yes. So have a look for this diagram and confirm, are you clear or not? Reply me in a chat box whether you are clear or not. ORM. What ORM does? It is simply persisting, storing the data in the object form as it is. So those who still remember our DAL layer, data access layer, in our insert query, what we did, we just try to get the data. Okay, we fetch the data, but while storing the data, we go with extracting the data and giving the data. Sneha, was you there in our JDBC sessions? Okay, just a minute. Okay, so whenever we are working with the JDBC, I hope you remember all our insert, update, delete statement. This is how we inserted the record. Are you clear? This is how we try to insert the record. So by just looking at this, can anyone tell me whichever the values I am sending here, are these individual parameter or am I sending the whole object? My first option, individual parameter I'm sending to the database. And my second option, is it my whole object that I'm sending to the database? So anyone can see that individual parameter I'm sending here, I'm assigning here. Neha. Okay. So this is how you are not sending the object. Are we working with the object-oriented technology? Yes. So whenever we are working with the object-oriented programming, we should work with the object and we should send the object over there. Correct, na? So ORM will help you. You give me the object, I will store that object directly to the database. Now clear? Okay. So I will find out that insert code over there with the help of object. Okay. Otherwise, revise all our session. We properly seen all this concept. So instead of assigning the value to each and every question mark, I am giving the full object of an employee, and based on that object, data will get inserted. You will get the idea. So that is the ORM tool. Means Java application which are working with the object will be given to the ORM. ORM will map all this object related information to the database, right? And this data will get stored directly into the database. So there is a no conversion key, get the values, convert into the parameters and all. So directly object will get saved. So Hibernate is a ORM tool. This Hibernate will help you to store the object into the relational database model, right? Where the classes are mapped to the tables. So in a Hibernate, what exactly happened? Classes will get mapped to the tables and objects are getting mapped to the rows. Fields, fields of object, attributes of object are mapped to the columns. So Hibernate gives you the persistent framework so that object will get persisted to the database. So fast performance, database independent query. You don't have to use a SQL structured query. As we are working with the application specific Hibernate query language we can use. Automatic table creation. In a Hibernate, table structure we are providing, we are mapping. So table will get created automatically. Are you clear? Okay. And this is the architecture of Hibernate. Application Hibernate API will help you to persist object into the database. To persist the object into the database. So this is in detail architecture of a Hibernate. Java application which are working with the object will have this API, and through this API your object will get persisted to the database side. So API used by this JNDI, JDBC, JTA, JPA repository, all these used by this, and these components are helping us for storing the data. Okay, so let's see how Hibernate is going to do this. This Hibernate component for persisting the data to the database, session factory, session, transaction, connection, these are helping us for persisting. Okay, so first we'll see the steps. Once you clear with the demo, then we individually will go with the component and we'll try to see the use of this. Okay, now Hibernate is not an inbuilt API given by Java, right? It is a framework, lightweight framework, open source. So from somewhere I have to download the jar file. Do you remember that we use jar files for database connectivity? So that time what we did, anyone remember the steps? What we did, first from the Google we downloaded the jar files. And second thing, compulsory, we have to add the jar file with the help of build path, configure build path, then going to the adding external jars. Yes, I hope you all remember. And then specific jar files, we give the reference like here, my jars. And this jar files, executable jar files I'm giving for my application, right? JDBC driver jar files we given to the database connectivity. So this is the manually how we downloaded and we added the reference. But for the Hibernate, will require lots of jar files. So simply you can do one thing. You can go to the Google and mention Hibernate jar files to download. You will have to download lots of jar files and then you have to manually add the reference for this different jar files. So instead of doing this, we are having a very simple project here. So we are entering into the new project that is called as a Maven project. So what will be the benefit of Maven project? You don't have to manually download the jar files and you don't have to add the external jar files manually. Are you clear? Okay. So steps, file, new, Maven project. Benefit of Maven project is you don't have to manually download the dependencies. You just have to mention the dependencies that will get downloaded by the application. So internet connectivity is mandatory for this. Create a simple project. Next, name of the application. So for example, Hibernate, first application, introduction to the Hibernate application. Okay, so artifact ID and name. You can give the different, I'm giving the same. Another important thing that what type of packaging we are creating. jar file is used for console application and war file is used for the web application. So for taking understanding introduction to the Hibernate, I'm using jar file. Okay. And this is description. This is my first Hibernate application. Till this clear? You just have to give group ID, artifact ID, version keep the same one. Instead of any other packaging, select the jar and say finish. Okay, you can observe the progress bar here to the right side, bottom side, and your project will get created. So what name I given over here? Hibernate introduction. Okay, so project will get created over here. Now just observe it properly. For the Hibernate project, src main Java, src main resources, then pom.xml, these files get added, right? So pom.xml, what is the use of this pom.xml? This is very important file, pom.xml. Have you seen that whatever the group ID, artifact ID, version, description, name of the project I given, all are coming over here. And this is the file where we are going to mention what are dependencies to download. For example, I want to download Hibernate specific jar files. So from where I will get that all Hibernate specific jar files. You can use this website MVN repository, right? And on this MVN repository, so I'm just going to give the, I want Hibernate related dependency jar files. Can you see that all Hibernate specific jar files are available? Whichever the jar file you want to use, for example, Hibernate 5. So Hibernate 5 specific jar files I want to download. So you can simply click on this, right? Whichever the version you want to use that respective version. For example, I will show here how to get it, right? And this is the dependency. Simply copy, Control C, come back here and in the your pom.xml, paste it. So this is how you can do it for each and every. Okay. So every day we have to take the dependencies, we have to do this. So what I'm doing, I'm just giving you as a ready-made, but I'm just showing you the technique how you can get the dependencies. So what you can do from my given pom.xml file, right? You have to copy the content from the build tag, from build, right? Copy all the content. So you can see here, Maven specific plugin, Hibernate core libraries. This is the version of the library. Can you see MySQL dependency? Are you clear with this MySQL connector Java? So all these are the dependencies that I am giving instruction to my Maven project to download for this. So what you have to do, simply right click on project, Maven, update project and force update. So what will happen when you go for the force update? All the dependencies will get downloaded. Can you see here Maven dependency folder get added and whichever the dependency we mention over here, MySQL connector, Hibernate core libraries, all are getting added. So there is a no need manually download it from Google. Right click build path and add external Java. Are you clear with the benefit of Maven project? Yes. Suppose tomorrow one new dependency I want to add. I will simply go inside the pom.xml. I will add a respective dependency here, save the file, update Maven project. Dependency will get downloaded from the internet and will get assigned to your application. You can see the observe the progress bar over here. So that progress bar is downloading the dependency. Are you clear? So this is the dependency I downloaded. Okay. And here inside the src main Java, all your Java specific files will be inside src main Java. So this is like a console application I created, tester package, and I want to test simple Hibernate application. So static void main. We'll focus only on the console application for today. Tomorrow we'll try to use that in a web application. So this is basically, I'm going to create Hibernate first application, right? Okay. Again, let me tell you what exactly Hibernate is going to do. Okay. So give attention. I have a Java program and Java program have a class. So let me show you the simple example. I have a Java program. Java program have a class and that class contains private data member, and you know the scope of private data member, private int roll number, right? Then I have string name and city, and as well as I will have private double total percentage or grade or something you can add, right? This class will have a constructor, will have a getter setter, will have a getters and setters, and will have a simple toString. So we know that what to term for this class. This is called as Pojo class, right? And this Pojo class object means no extra business logic. So this Pojo class object, if I create, that is my student object. And what that student object is going to have, if we have a parameterized constructor, what we are going to have over here? Are we going to have roll number, name of the student, then city of the student, then total percentage, right? So this is my object. I have this entire object as it is, right? And this object stdobj as it is, I want to store into the database. So what I have to create? I have to create a database, and this database will have a table. So table structure must be same as my class structure. Okay. So Hibernate API are going to take this student object. For example, if I want to represent this student object in a diagram format on the heap, my student object will get stored like this, where ID, roll number, name, city, and percentage are stored over here, right? So what Hibernate will do? Hibernate will take this object as it is. I said as it is. No any other conversion, and will store the object into the respective table. Are you clear? You don't have to go with the get roll number, get name, get city, get, and you don't have to pass the parameter individually. You can directly send the object. So that is the benefit of Hibernate. Okay. So Hibernate will take the object from the application, will store into the database. So can you guess, for storing the object from this application side to the database side, what are the things that we required? Means what are the things required by the application, by the Hibernate API? Don't you think that we have to mention connection to the database? Where to store the data, in which table, user ID, password, credentials and all, right? Where the data must get saved. And if object of the student class must be stored, so mapping information must be given. Mapping information must be given to the database. The object in which table, right? Which columns? Are you clear? So this information, how we have to provide? We have to provide it with the help of very simple thing. So these are called as a mapping information. So what are the steps? Create a Maven project we created. Then existing form.xml, which is not having any, what you can say, any dependencies added, we have to add the dependency. And then update a Maven project. Then create the persistent class and use a annotation. So two ways are there to map this information. One is using the XML file. Second is using the annotation. But version 3 onwards, annotations are recommended. So we are using annotations here. Then create a configuration file, that is a Hibernate specific configuration file, and create a class that retrieves and stores the persistent object and run the application. Very simple steps. Okay, so we'll follow the steps. Maven project we created, we modify the form.xml. Then next is create a persistent classes that is called as an entity class. Okay, so observe this. src main Java. This is the folder where you can keep all your Java related files. I'm going to put it under the form.entity. You can use form.pojo, you can use anything. So, do we have a student table? No. So, I'm going to use a class name as student. Okay. And this student will be a simple Pojo class, no business logic at all. And this will have a data member, that is roll number, private string name, private string city, and I will have private double total percentage. Okay, clear? Now, to the Hibernate, I have to give information कि whenever object of student get created, it must get persisted into the table. So whose object I'm going to persist, that class must have the annotation @entity. javax.persistence package @entity. So object will get persisted. But where? You have to give the name of table. So the annotation, these annotations will get read by the Hibernate API. In which table? If you don't mention the name, same name will get mapped. So what @table annotation is going to do? @table map class with table. Are you clear? @table annotation map class. What is the name of class? Student with the table. Have I given the name of table? No. So by default, it will consider the same name as the class name. Then roll number, name, city, percentage. These must be columns into the table. Are you getting me? So column, this annotation. So column, what it will do? Column map field attribute to name of column, to the column in database. So mapping column. Have I given the name? No. So by default, first we'll see with the by default and then we'll see how to change the name. Right? Then each and every data member which you want to map into the column will have this annotation. Are you clear till this? In student table, which column will act as a unique identification? Primary key. So there is the annotation @ID, which act as a primary key, unique identification primary key. So that's it. I have to give instructions to the API key. If I'm going to persist the object of student, this is a class which is persisted, whose object will get persisted. Table will be the same name as the class name, will get created. ID column annotations mention which column, which data members map to which, right? Add a getter setter, which will require further. We have to add a constructor, both constructor, default constructor, parameterized constructor. I'm going to add both constructor. Initialization you can do here, and I'm writing a simple toString. That's it. This is my simple Pojo class, right? Inside the Pojo class, I mentioned ki what things will get mapped. So API will read this annotation, based on that the structure will get created. So I done with the very first step or second step, you can say, creating the persistent class. Fourth step is very important. Create the configuration file where you want to store the data, where you want to keep the data, persist the data. So database is specific. So what will be the content here? Configuration file. What configuration file contain? Database connection, username, password. All this information will be here. How you will create it? It's very simple. You just have to create a simple XML file. That XML file must have the name hibernate.cfg.xml. Okay. So here XML file we have to create, but where? All external files, resource file, externally providing the resource. That resource must be under the folder src main resources. So I just copied my previous XML file and I'm going to paste over here. Why? Because lots of things in a XML we have to write. So you can also do one thing. You can simply copy that XML file, right? And now have a look for this hibernate.cfg.xml file. Now tell me here with a JDBC, are we using driver class? Have we used the driver class? Those who done JDBC, those who remember JDBC, simply yes or no. I will not ask what is the use of driver class. I will tell that. What is the use of driver class? Do you remember we added the external jar file, MySQL connector, and that driver class from that jar files, we load it with the help of reflection from name, class.forName, right? So that method loads that driver. Just cross check with your JDBC code. Is it the same driver we are using? Yes. So are we giving information to the Hibernate API? Which driver? Based on that, respective connection will get established. Username and password root. And this is the URL connection, JDBC connection, that is protocol, subprotocol, name of the machine where your database is stored, port number where you will have this information, and we have database for our last sessions. I created a database. So what is the name of database? Let's see. Java Feb is the name of database. Okay. So I just have to change here Java Feb. Am I mentioning all the details where I'm getting connected, where I want to get connected with the help of this hibernate.cfg.xml file? You don't have to type it. You simply take it, copy it, and paste in your application, right? Entire XML file you have to copy paste. Then we'll see the use of this show SQL, format SQL, HBM, Hibernate mapping to data definition language, auto update. Two ways are there, either create or update, right? So till this clear everyone, what will be the use of hibernate.cfg.xml file? Is it specific? mentioning database specific database related information. Where is our database? For which credentials, username and password, right? Which driver we are using, okay? Auto commit true or false. So it is a false. Explicitly you have to make it as a commit. So property, name of the property and the value that we are mentioning in a session factory, right? Session factory tag. But which class we are going to store? Are you clear? That you have to map here. So you have to add that what mapping classes. So which class we have to map over here? I want to persist all my classes which are having @annotation, at the rate entity annotation. So I have com.pojo and inside that com.pojo, I have a student class. This is the class which I want to persist. These information we are giving to the Hibernate API, means name of the database, right? Driver information as well as name of the class which we want to store. Till this clear, everyone? Yes or no, reply in the chat box. So we mentioned classes which we want to map. But here this will work when your class is having annotation @entity only that time. Otherwise, it will not get identified as a persistent object, right? Okay. So we're done with this. Now the next very important step, that is how we are going to store the data. So we created the configuration file, then create a class that retrieves or store the persistent object. So I'm going to create a class that is my tester class, test Hibernate application. Okay. Now, how this Hibernate application will work? What will be the flow of this? Okay. Hibernate functionality, flow or usage. Okay. So what I will do, I will, instead of writing here, either in a notepad or in a pen, we'll see the steps. So what will happen as soon as you run the application, right? Whenever on startup, you can say when application startup that is run. Hibernate read configuration file. Configuration file. Which was that configuration file? I created hibernate.cfg.xml file. Everyone remember what is there inside the configuration file? It contains information required to make the connection with database, mapping information which class to persist, user ID, password, and rest of the information. All will get aware by the Hibernate application. Then what a Hibernate does, Hibernate create. So Hibernate create an instance of entity class. Do you remember we given that annotation? Which one? @entity. So entity class instance object get created. So entity classes are the simple Java Pojo classes which is mapped to the database table using annotation. So have we used annotation @ID, @column, @table? Yes. So these mapping information will be known to the Hibernate. These instances are called transient object. So these instances are called transient object. So if you remember the word transient means what? Which is not yet persisted, right? So the transient object are the object which are not yet persisted. Normal object, not yet stored. So next step, to persist, because the entire Hibernate is used to persist the data. So to persist an object, right? To persist an object, application asks, your program will ask, application asks for session factory. So this is one of the component of Hibernate application, Hibernate architecture. Will ask for session from session factory. So we'll ask for session from session factory. Right? We'll see what is that session factory. So session factory is nothing but the factory for all the session, and session represent session represent a physical database connection. Actual connection with the database is done by the session. Once the session get created means what? Once the connection get established to the database, then what? Application, Hibernate application start the transaction. Starts the transaction. Okay. It starts the transaction to make the unit of work automate and uses session API to finally persist the object. Right? And once the object get persist object to database. Once this is done, close the session. To close session, the entity instance becomes the detached. So that is the object which is detached from the application. So these are the steps. These are the this is the flow how Hibernate application is going to do. So Hibernate application create the instance of entity class. Shall I create an instance of entity class here? Okay, so we'll write here, create an instance of entity class. Which is the entity class? Student is the entity class. Com.pojo.student. This is my object of student. And I will give the hard coded value, or you can take it from the user also. So 1, name of the student, Ramesh, city of the student, Pune, and these are the percentage. Is that okay? So step 1 we done, we created an object, but this is transient. Transient object means not yet persisted. This is not yet persisted. So Hibernate will read a connection specific from configuration file. Hibernate will read the data from the configuration file, right? Config file. How Hibernate is going to read the data from the configuration file. Now here we have to go through the diagram. Here, one of the component given by Hibernate API is the configuration class. Okay, so use this configuration class org hibernate.cfg. This is the config class, right? New, create an instance, new configuration dot configure is the method, and what this is going to do, it will load compulsory hibernate.cfg.xml file from the resource folder. So name must be the same one. Okay, how I will come to know that configuration loaded or not? Connect database information is known or not? Configuration is loaded. Just give a system. If any problem is there, it will not give you this. It will show you the error. Then once the config get loaded, based on configuration, based on config information, create session factory. Hibernate application will create a factory of a session. So how it will get created? Interface session factory will get created based on the configuration. Build session factory is the method. So based on this connection database specific information, session factory will get created and get a current session, get a one session to establish the physical connection to the database. So get a session from the session factory. So SF is the shortcut for the session factory. So one instance of the session we are going to create interface sf dot get current session. So actual physical connection to database get created. Then you have to start the transaction. Application of Hibernate application must start the transaction. So to perform the methods, perform the transaction over there. So create an object of transaction org.hibernate trans is equal to session dot begin transaction. So the operations you can perform, unit operations you can perform, insert, update, delete. Okay. And now here, a simple step, persist data. Okay. Instead of data, I will say persist object into database. So see, revision or the flashback. I have an object of an entity class which I want to store. So I created an object. But where to store that information I given in a hibernate.cfg.xml file. So Hibernate application will read the data from hibernate.cfg.xml file based on this configuration. Based on this configuration, build a session factory and through that session factory, get one instance that is a get current session. Once the session get established, means the actual connection to the database and the application get created. And based on that, start your unit of work, right? So to make the unit of work automatic and to persist the entity instance into the database, create a transaction, start the transaction. And now I have an object to store. Give it to the session.save is the method. I'm giving my object here, object student to persist. See the simple thing. You do not have to write an insert query. No insert query needed to write over here. No insert query. Once the session uh, once the data gets saved, right? Just give a message inserted. But which object inserted? That is the obj student. Then once you done this, transaction dot commit save changes permanently. Once you done this, close the session. So the open connection dot open will get closed. So the application database connection close, right? And this is a simple Hibernate application, how it is working. Flow is clear for everyone so that I can execute this. Okay. Now, which database I'm using? Let me show you again. Look at the name of database. Database is Java Feb. I will show you that Java Feb database, right? Java Feb, I'm right now currently in it. And if I'm going to show the tables, look at this and tell me, have I created any student table over here? No, right? I'm running my application and observe the console. Execute this. Then run application. Can you see here? Configuration is loaded. Means what? That src main resources hibernate.cfg.xml file get loaded. Now my application knowing that which driver class, which database, for which user, for which password, right? That is our first step, loaded the configuration. Then the second thing, observe this. Everyone know what is the use of this command. Yes? Is it a DDL statement to define the structure of the table? Create a table student. Is it taking the same name as the class name? So let me show you my class over here. Okay. Now see how Hibernate is going to do the mapping. I given this entity means what this class object will get persisted. For the class, we apply the annotation table. Have I given any extra name? No. By default, it is taking the class name. Is it creating the table based on the name of class? Yes. Then we use @ID and column annotation for the same data member roll number. But I haven't changed the name of column. So by default, roll number as it is column get created. Data type int over here in the application to the database side, it is the integer. I apply @ID annotation. So @ID means primary key, not null constraints. You cannot have a primary key as a null. Are you clear? And can you see here, primary key is going to apply on the roll number. So that is the benefit of @ID annotation. Rest of all data members are get annotated with the column. Are they coming as a column over here? So table get created. Are you clear? Mapping is done by the Hibernate. I don't have to create a table separately. Then I given a tester class over here, and inside the tester class, I just mentioned ki, what is the record which I want to store. So I just created a student object. Look at here. And this student object is going to have roll number, name, percentage, and rest of the thing. So is it my insert query when I'm giving session dot save at this line, at line number 42, when we go for a session dot save, object is getting saved. I haven't given the individual parameter. So is it executing your dal layer query? Insert into student, sequence, values, question mark, question mark, question mark. So JDBC is used internally over here and the record get inserted. Let's see the proof. Earlier, I was having only 4 tables before running my Hibernate application. If I go for a show tables, have you observed a table get created whose the name is same as the class name, student, right? Then, if I'm going to describe the structure of student table, are you getting roll number, integer, primary key, name? I haven't given any extra names explicitly, so the defaults are given. Length is 255 characters long. Percentage double. Yes. And now if you go for select star from student, can you see here a record which I given is coming over here. Got the use of Hibernate API. Everyone reply in the chat box. Clear or not? You don't have to write a connection first of all. You don't have to write a statement, insert, update, delete, select. You do not have to work with the JDBC API. Only the simplest thing is create an object and give that object to the Hibernate API for persisting it. Hibernate API is going to do so. As simple as that, right? So those who are aware with the JDBC, just go earlier JDBC code and see that for just inserting a record, what we have to do. Pojo classes, dial layers, everything we created. But insert query you have to write. There you have to face the some syntactical problems, right? SQL exception. Here, I don't have to worry about how to generate an insert query. This will get done. So let's have a look again here, hibernate.cfg.xml file. Okay, here. Can you see here, show SQL is true. And what is the benefit of show SQL true? Whichever the SQL query get generated, it will get displayed on console. Then next, Hibernate to DDL mapping. Insert, update, delete, create, all these statements are getting displayed on the console. So that is the thing. Once you clear key, yes, what how the queries are getting generated, insert, update, delete, create, then you can make it as a false. Okay. So let me run this again, but I given a primary key. So I cannot insert one again. So I'm going to insert another record. Let's say Suresh and the percentage I'm giving over here. Okay. Okay, you can make it as a dynamic application, scanner class, accept the details from the user. Now observe one thing, application started, configuration file get loaded. Observe this, what is getting skipped, which is not getting executed again. Is it executing the query, create a table student? Is it creating the new table? Now second time when I'm giving my second record for insertion, is it using the existing table? Creating a new table, option 1. Existing table, using the existing table, option 2. What it is using? Is it using existing table? Yes. Otherwise, again, you can see over here, na, create a table and all. Okay. Have a look over here, select star from and observe. Are you getting two columns, two rows added over here with the different values? Are you clear? Okay. But if we are going to mention in a hibernate.cfg create, what I did instead of update, I give create. And this is my third record I want to give, right? So let's say student, city, and rest of the percentage. Fine. I run this, Control F11, run this, and observe the console and tell me the difference, create and update. Those who are aware with SQL commands, DDL statements, they know the meaning of this. Drop table if exists student. Is it mean that whenever I'm giving create as a command over here, what Hibernate is going to do? It will not use existing table. First of all, it will drop the table if exist. So old table will get deleted. Then creating a new table again and going for insert query. So see here, this was the record from my old table. If I go for select star from, have you observed the thing? Old table was getting removed totally. And again, a new table based on the entity table structure get created. So can I say that with the help of this create, for every execution, new table will get created. It will not hold the old value. Are you clear? It will not hold the old value. See, again I run this. Again it will go for drop if exist and then create, and then insert. Are you clear? Drop table if exist. So let test newly added record I will get, but I will not get the old record because the table gets deleted. So that is totally depending on the requirement of the application, either to make a create or to update. Everyone clear? How Hibernate works, how mapping is done, how table data will get extracted from the object. This is all because of this annotation. Which annotations we use? At the rate entity, at the rate table, at the rate column, and rest of the thing. Are you clear with this? Everyone? Okay. So this is how annotation works. Now, here, when I'm going to run this, till now the object is a transient object, means what? Not yet persisted, not attached with the database. But as soon as I'm giving this save, this obj is called as persisted object, which is going to be attached with the database, going to be a persistent object. And once the session and all close over here, and if I'm going to work with object student right now, at this moment, it is detached object. So what is the persistent object? Object which is associated with the current session and whose state is synchronized with the database, whose state is saved with the database, persistent. Detached, which is disconnected from the database. Once you store that, it becomes a detached. A detached object was having an association at a previous point of time with the session, but now made to detach, taken off from the current session. So line number 49 is a detached, right? And earlier created is the transient object. Means do not have any association with the current session, but can get persisted, can get permanent, persistent at a later time. Are you clear with the phases or the state of the object? Everyone? So I will write that, I will modify that in a PPT also. State of the object, right? Remember this, all states, state of object in Hibernate. First step is transient, means do not associated or do not have any association with current session, not associated with current session, a normal object, current session, but maybe later it will get associated. Persistent object, which is associated with the current session, which is associated with current session, which is associated with the current session. And third step is detached object. So what is a detached object? A detached object having an association with the previous point of time with the session, but now made to detach, means taken off from current session. That is detached object. Till this clear, everyone? So these are the phases of your object. Okay. Saving this. So let's revise it again, how the Hibernate application works. Hibernate.cfg.xml information about the database, Pojo classes, and the tester class. So again, if I want to create one more new class, for example, I want to create a book specific information to be stored into the database. So I have to go through these steps again, correct? Na? Build session factory, get current session and all. I have to go through this. So can I do the reusability that we did in our JDBC? Yes. Okay, reusability we can have. Okay, so revising all the steps again, once again. To create a simple Hibernate application, steps are create a Maven project. Why Maven project? Because you do not have to download the dependency jar file manually. Okay, so this is my Hibernate, a simple project, persistent object or mapping. Hibernate component mapping. So the artifact ID, you can change it. Snapshot 0.0.1, jar file for a console. And this is Hibernate application, any description. Simply say finished. Once you created this, second thing, modify form.xml. So instead of writing all these things, from Maven repository, you will get it. Otherwise, whichever form.xml I am going to provide here, after build tag, copy all the content, save this. Once you modify your form.xml, very important thing that you don't have to forget, right click, Maven, update project and force update. Till this clear? Right? What will happen when you are going to make it as a force update? All the dependencies will get downloaded. Right? All the dependencies will get downloaded. Maven dependencies folder, you can see that all dependencies on the machine. Then next step is simply create a Pojo class. It must be inside the package. So com.pojo or entity, you can give it like you want. And for example, book is the name of Pojo class. This class object must get persisted. So @entity annotation. Table must get created @table. But if you remember earlier, I haven't given the name of the table. So by default, it takes the name as the class name. I want to create it like a my book. So explicitly giving it. If not given, name not given. If name not given, then class name will be name of table. Have you observed previously? Then every table will have the data member. That is the column. What is that? Book ID. So this must be the column @column. If you don't give the name, by default name will be same as the field. Have we observed that earlier example? Yes. So I want to give the book underscore ID as the name of column. Are you getting? And this book ID will be the primary key. So @ID, which make it as a primary key. How many characters, sorry, for the name, how many characters you want to store? So for example, private string book name. This is the name of column. So annotation @column. What is the name of the book? Column of this book. If you don't give by default book name, I give explicitly book underscore name. And what will be the length? Length will be 20 characters sufficient. instead of 255 characters. And one more I'm going to add over here as book author, right? So this is book author, book author, right? And private double price of the book. So again, annotation at the rate column. What is the name of this? Name of the column will be book underscore price. Is that okay? Clear? Compulsory, if you want to change the name, you have to give the parameter name. Otherwise, by default, it will go with the default one. So add a getter setter, add a constructor, default constructor, parameterize constructor, and toString. That's it. Then what else you have to do? You just have to create a configuration file because we haven't created a configuration file. So do one thing. Earlier created a configuration file, hibernate.cfg.xml. Simply copy a whole XML file and put under the SRC main resource. Otherwise, manually create a XML file and carefully write down the content over there. So let's have a look here. Auto commit means what? Explicitly through the transaction you have to make commit. Driver class, from the jar files, which class will get loaded so that socket programming, socket connection, and the database related things will be done. For which username and password, for which database, show SQL, format SQL, HBM to DDL. And the next is Hibernate mapping, which class you want to map. So I don't have a student class right now. I want to map the book class, right? Okay. These are the steps. Next, create an application and test it. So I will just go with one layer extra because every time I have to create a session factory and all. So I'm going to create a Hibernate util. So let's say util, like we created a DB util, and I have the class Hibernate util, and inside the Hibernate util, reusable code we are writing. Per application, per application, single session factory. Single session factory. How? So you can simply create private static session factory SF and simply write a getter static which is going to return me like we return a connection object in our dbutil connection. So session factory and name of the function is get session factory. And what it is going to do, see reusable code. I will require the configuration. So config is equal to new configuration dot configure. It will load the configuration file hibernate.cfg.xml. Based on that session factory we are going to create. So configuration dot build session factory, and whichever the session factory created, we are going to return the session, right? So this is the reusable business logic session factory, get session factory, which is returning the session factory. And now we just reduce that every time writing the task in the form of class and method. And this is what I'm going to do. Test, let's say CRUD operation, insert, update, delete. So book application with the Hibernate, and that will be my tester. So tester static void main. So here I don't have to create again session factory and all. What I will do, I will simply go for a session object of the session class. And how I will get it? Hibernate util. I have a method get session factory static method will return me the session factory, and based on that I have to get the current session. So session get created, then transaction will get created over here. So transaction is equal to session dot begin transaction, right? And I want to store the object of book class. So book obj is equal to new book parameterized constructor. So you can see here, I have to give name of book, right? I have to provide the name of book explicitly. So what I can do here is, I will write something as a auto-generated primary key kind of thing. We'll see that in a next example. And this is the book price. Once you have a transient object, give that object to the session save method. So it becomes a persistent object. Persistent object, right? This is transient object. Once you save it to the database, transaction.commit, save the changes compulsory, otherwise changes will not be made. Then take off the session, close the session, so physical connection will get closed. And then sys out, if you give a message, inserted object. But which object we inserted? If I'm going to display the object right now, object, which was that? Book obj, book object. Is it connected to the session? No. So this is detached object. Execute this. So new table will get created. Let's see what is the error. Okay, it's related to the duplicate entry. So I will go with 103. Okay, fine. You can see here, table is getting created. Maybe for the detached object, I having the error. We'll see that. If you go with the show tables, can you see that book table get created? If you go with the describe my book, now see, instead of having 250 character, whichever the length we given and whichever the customized name we given, are we coming with the our provided name? That is not going with the default. And if I go with select start from my book, am I getting the name of the book? I just changed the ID, rest of the thing I kept same. So two records with the same values get added. Are you clear till this? Yes or no? Yes. So this is how Hibernate application works. Okay. Look at this. Are we providing the external name, the size? Again, do you want to keep the nullable? So null or what? Nullable, true or false? Do you want to keep the null values? So make it as a true. Do you want to make the null not allowed? Make the false. Okay. So this is a very simple thing. And now are you getting the benefit of ORM? So what is that ORM? Like we discussed, is it doing the things like just a second, this one, is it mapping application class to the database table, application field to the columns, and is it mapping a object instance to the row? And by using a simple save method, we are able to save this permanently to the database site without writing repeated heavy code of JDBC, insert, update, delete, or anything. Is it giving you the clean separation over here? Simple thing. Are you clear, everyone? Okay, just give me a 2 minutes and then we'll continue for the next. So till that point, you just go through this. I will be back in a 2 minutes. Okay. Clear? So steps are also very easy. Important thing, Maven project, configuration file, Pojo class, right? Okay. Creating the object, session factory. These are the component of Hibernate application. So session factory, which is nothing but the generating session, a factory for session instance, right? A client have to get the session from the session factory. Session is what a single threaded, short-lived object representing a conversation between the application and the persisted store, that is the database. It wraps the JDBC SQL connection factory for Hibernate transaction. Okay. So this is how Hibernate works. Now let's go for to resolve the mismatches that we have between application and the database. So first mismatch we seen, that is the granularity. Are you clear? So what is that granularity? If you has a relationship between the application inside the classes, so how that granularity is going to resolve over here. In this example, you can see component mapping. Employee has a address, right? So okay, just a minute. Okay. So if a class employee is there and employee contain address, so the instance of employee is going to have the data member of address as well. Okay. So in application, it is very much possible that an entity class can have a reference to the another class as a member variable, which has a relationship. So if the referred class does not have its own life cycle, it is completely depending on the life cycle of the owing entity. In this example, as such address will not exist. Address is totally depend on the life of employee, right? That is dependent on the owing entity class. So in this example, what we are going to see, how we are going to do the component mapping using Hibernate annotation. So the relationship mentioned here, employee has an address. So according to this relationship, each employee should have a unique address, right? So since employee and address entities are strongly related, which is a composition relationship, it is better to store them in a single table, one employee, one object, right? So how we are going to do this? Annotations are used over here. So for the employee class and for the address class. Employee class will have the annotation embedded and address class will have the annotation embeddable. So let's see this with the simple example, that is component mapping. I hope earlier example of book is clear for everyone. So understand this structure, component mapping. I have a class, observe this address. What address class contain? Address class contain private, string, city, and private, string, state, even country, and rest of the thing you can take. This is my address class. I'm going to create a new class, which is nothing but employee class. Okay, let me check that whether I have an employee table. Yes, I have an employee table. So I have to give the different name over there. Okay, so we'll make it as a ICSD employee. Otherwise, we'll change it with the help of name. So every employee will have employee ID, unique identification, employee ID. Then string, private, string, name, then private, double, salary. Every employee will have this. Also, every employee is going to contain address. Are you clear here? And like this, every employee, rest of the thing, getter, setter, constructors, default constructor, all these things will be here. Okay, toString and everything. So generating toString. Okay. So when this entity class object will get persisted, @entity annotation will be here, because without this, the data will not get persisted. Are you clear? @entity annotation will be over here. Then this must be stored into the separate table. So @table, and as already I have my earlier application created employee table, I'm going to give it as a my employee. I change the name. To make this as a primary key, I have to use @ID and @column. But do you want to give ID manually or do you want to generate it automatically? Earlier two example we seen, manually we are giving the primary key. Now in this example, I'm going to generate it automatically. So how you can generate it automatically? There is a separate annotation we have here, right? @generated, right? So strategy, sorry, generated value. And strategy we are going to specify auto, means automatically ID will get generated. Now here internally sequences are used. Okay, so I'm not providing the ID explicitly. It will get generated automatically. Fine. Then what is the name of this column? So I will keep the same as it is, because we saw that how to change it explicitly. But what about this? Is it holding a one value, or is this object holds city, state, pin code? It is not holding a one value. It is holding city, state, and pin code. So whenever the table get created, object will get stored over there. So that city, state name must get retrieved. So here you have to give annotation @embedded, @embedded inside the class. And to the address class, only one annotation @embeddable. So this object is embedded inside the class employee. So @column for the city will get generated, and @column for the state. Again, for this object, you have to assign the values. So you will require the getter, setter, right? Constructors, and you will require the toString. Is that clear for everyone? So it's like a normal class. Only the annotation @table and @entity is not given. So this is what? Address class, employee class. And now let's start the tester again. Tester for component mapping. So tester for component mapping. Okay. Now again, the benefit of Hibernate util, you do not have to write the same connection specific steps. Simply get session factory, right? And assign it to the session object. So session is equal to get session factory dot get current session. Okay. Then based on the session, create a transaction org.hibernate. Transaction is equal to session dot get transaction I want to create an object of employee. So employee EMP. But employee, if you see here, employee contains address of object of address class. So I'm not providing the name over here. Sorry, ID over here. Name we provided, salary we provided, and a new address, object of the address class we provided, city and state, right? City, state. So this is the full object of the employee. Give it to the session for saving. Session dot save a whole object of employee which contains address. Then transaction dot commit and session dot close and simply give the information inserted. Inserted, right? And observe this. First, understand the structure of table, employee and address, how the tables are getting called. Okay. Somewhere I may be not adding a constructor. So add a default constructor over here also. Oh, and we forgot one thing. What is that thing? Can anyone guess? This tester component is going to map the employee. So inside Hibernate CFG .xml file, we have to give this mapping entity. So mapping class, which one? Form dot pojo dot employee only. Don't add address class because address will not be an entity. It is embedded inside the employee class. Okay. So can you see a table is getting created? My employee, right? Who the structure is, first of all, show tables. Let's see. My employee is getting created or not. Describe my employee. Can you see address class city state is getting added inside the employee table. So this is the granularity. Even you have a date over here. So day, month, year will also get added over here. Okay. So that is the granularity. So let me check why, why it is not giving me. What is the error over here? So save is not. Sorry, not a get transaction. We have to go with the begin transaction. Okay, so small mistake. And say, execute this. Can you see record get inserted? So employee object along with the address get inserted over here. So select start from my employee. Can you get this? Okay. Now if you can create it like a runtime accepting address and other thing. I haven't given the ID over here, right? I haven't provided the ID, but IDs are getting generated automatically because there we use annotation generated value. So see here, ID 1 was there. Now can you see two ID get generated for the next employee? So that is the use of @generated value auto. Till this clear? So what we did, we just tried to find out the solution for the first mismatch, granularity. Okay. Now, similar way, what else you can do? The another mismatch we have inheritance mapping. Then different types of their inheritance mapping and association. One to one, one to many, many to many, many to one. We can achieve here with the help of ORM tool. So that is for today. I think this is enough for today's session. Tomorrow's session, we are going to see what was that rest of the thing, inheritance mapping and other related things. Till this clear, everyone? Okay, fine. Anyone having any doubt? So here we perform only insert. Can I go with update, delete, select? Yes. So CRUD operations all we can perform here. Okay. Okay. So we'll stop here. If no one having any doubt. Okay, we'll stop here.